Okay, here we are, ThinkTech live with Peter Kay here on a Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. broadcasting on Ustream and Spreaker. And if you want to see this, just check in at thinktechhawaii.com and there are links there that will show you the embed video and audio. Peter, welcome to the show. Great to have you again.
Great to be here with you, Jay. We always have a lot of fun,
Yeah, we
and
do.
I look forward to it every single time, truly.
We do.
Yes.
We make up so much.
We're going to make all this up. We're making everything up. We're making it all up.
Okay, so the first thing is tell the people how they can communicate and engage with us today.
Oh, well, I'm going to be checking out the comments section on the ThinkTech Hawaii Facebook page. So you should go to go to Facebook, search for ThinkTech Hawaii. You'll go there, Facebook page, like it. And the first post, I'll be checking and looking for comments. And hopefully, if we get your comments, we'll try to address them on the show.
Great. And the show is called, there are multiple names for this show, but we're going to call the bottom line name is we're going to call it the Fourth Amendment Blues. That's Peter's idea, and I really like it. The other names we have considered giving it is a social networking analysis, and I'll explain why we came up with that. And the other is data gathering in these United States, taking a page out of Reader's Digest back in the 30s. They always called it These United States.
Oh, These United States. Okay. All right. Great.
In case you don't know who that is, the man at my left is Peter Kay, the CEO of CyberCom, star of stage and screen, the computer Minuteman person, and what else you want to say?
Master of time, space, and dimension.
There it is.
Yeah.
I forgot that part, but
okay.
I go with that.
It's a rough one. It's been a long term to get that title. It took me a while. It's taken me a while.
We are delighted to have you here.
Great to be here, and I got that. I just texted us on your guys' page, so we're good. Yes.
Okay, and the other guest, which isn't here in the studio, is an unidentified person who is listening and participating in every word we say, probably recording it and making notes, diligent notes, and that person is from the NSA.
That's right.
Welcome to the show, NSA.
Well, make sure you say the word Tea Party, Patriot, Constitution.
Stop.
That'll get their attention. Yeah, now we're really going to get their attention. And then the audit, taxes.
So the first part I want to talk about is what we do know, and I want to tell you a short story just to foment unrest here. In the year 2005, when I was doing ThinkTech on KHPR, one day I saw an article in the New York Times, which always sort of gets me going, about a guy in the Midwest, I want to say maybe Nebraska somewhere, who was into social networking analysis, hence the tagline for this show. And what is that social networking analysis? Well, he was a corporate contractor, and he would go to your corporation and he would look at all the email in your corporation and analyze the names and the words used in the email. And from this, he would create an alternative schema, an alternative organizational chart of the corporation. And he could tell you, the chief executive officer, who was really running the place, who was really influential and what. And that would help you in terms of using your resources, okay? And he found that all his friends and peers in this little game of social networking analysis were disappearing from the commercial sector. They were all going to Washington. They were all working for the federal government. They were all using social network analysis for other things. And these other things were, the black things under the Patriot Act. And they were making analysis to see, who was talking to who was at what meeting, who might have been in touch with a terrorist, and so forth, using the same skills, the same designs as he had been using. And he wasn't involved, but all his friends got involved. And that's where this whole thing started, I think. And now, we know the technology has gone far beyond that since 2005. So what do we know about what they are doing, Peter?
Well, come to find out, as luck would have it, I ran into a great article, which if you don't mind, I'm going to read very briefly of, and I think it tells us everything. Let me start, if I may. AT&T's traffic in San Francisco runs through fiber optic cables in an AT&T facility located at 611 Folsom Street in San Francisco. Listen to this one. Using a device called a, quote, splitter, unquote, a complete copy of the internet traffic that AT&T receives, email, web, browsing requests, and other electronic communications, sent to or from customers of AT&T's WorldNet internet service from people who use another service provider is diverted into a separate fiber optic cable which is connected to a room known as the SG3 room, which is controlled by the NSA. The other copy of the traffic continues on to the internet to its destination. I'll stop right there. So just what does that tell you? That tells us, now this is a public story. It came out in the Electronic Frontier. It was published by the EFF.org, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. This is not a crazed lunatic group, okay? So if this is public and this is known, I don't even want to imagine what's not known. But what does this imply for a moment? Think about this. So these guys are taking a copy, essentially a copy of internet traffic. So this is gigabytes.
All internet traffic on AT&T.
Through that goes the physical traffic that goes through AT&T's network at that specific location.
And of course, you have to assume that if AT&T is giving it up, so are the others.
So are the others, and if they're doing it in San Francisco, they're sure doing it in Chicago and New York and God knows where else.
And I remember, Verizon was also, they were the first ones named in this.
Verizon's were the first ones named, 100 million customers, and I'm a Verizon customer.
Yeah.
All right, so we know, I think it's very safe to say that this data is being gathered. I think it's fair and safe to say that.
But let me footnote
Go.
for a moment, and you can wrap this in. One of the other things that I learned in doing, ThinkTech in those days was that the Patriot Act. There was two of them, and I was amazed that Congress would pass this because it was rolling the Constitution back. It allowed you and I probably talked about this at the time. It was rolling the Constitution back, and they could put a black box in, for example, lava.net, and get all the traffic that way. And lava.net had precious little to say about it because the law permitted them to do that. The Patriot Act number 2, which Congress also surprised me because it made it worse, allowed them to go yet further. So we knew back in whenever that was 2003 maybe, or 4 and 5, we knew that the federal government had the right, had the legal power to do this. Maybe it's not something the country in general would have voted for, but Congress voted for it. Congress made 2 draconian statutes that allowed this sort of thing. And what is interesting, and it's sort of the platform for our whole discussion, is that this was legal a long time ago. Everything they are doing really is legal. It's just that nobody told us the detail. Not Verizon, interesting, not AT&T, and not the federal government. But it was legal a long time ago.
So now so you're a lawyer, right? Okay, so when you say it was legal a long time ago, well, I guess my question, and this is to me one of the, there's a lot of disturbing sort of ahas that we're getting out of this, right? And one of the disturbing ahas that comes to my mind is this. If I'm not mistaken, and please correct me, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm sure you're much more versed in constitutional first principles than I am. But my understanding is the Fourth Amendment guards us against unreasonable search and seizure. And it was specifically written to prohibit a general search and seizure. In other words, it was, if I'm not mistaken, the
probable cause.
The origin of, correct, you had to have probable cause, and it had to be against a specific individual or specific individuals. What, if I'm not mistaken, the origins behind the Fourth Amendment was in response to British soldiers going from house to house to house to house to house, searching with basically no cause whatsoever, going through people's private things to see what was there. And of course, if you're not breaking the law, you've got nothing to worry about, so let it all come through. Now, if that is the basis of the Fourth Amendment, and there haven't been subsequent amendments to the Constitution to negate that clause, how is what I just read to you, how is this not general search and seizure of your person?
Well, there is a court, that gives them what amounts to a search warrant of this information.
But is this not general search and seizure?
Probable cause is kind of hard to find, and individual by individual, that's hard to find too. But the reality is Congress passed both of these statutes, and maybe they were hypnotized or something. The way they were hypnotized moving into Iraq, about the same kind of hypnotism, if you will. Why did they do that? So what happened here is that the statutes were passed. They became the law. They were enforced by the government. Everybody in the government knew. Maybe you and I didn't know the detail, but we knew there were Patriot Acts. Nobody ever took it to the courts. Nobody ever challenged the constitutionality.
Boom.
Although it may be there's a good challenge in there somewhere.
I want to believe there's a good challenge in there somewhere.
The ACLU, right? I don't know the law. I don't know what they've done about the law. But I just wonder why nobody took it up, or maybe they did take it up and lost. There's got to be a body of law about this, and I want to have a show about that very issue. Neither you nor I are up on it, but what strikes me funny is that right now, by default, that's the way it works. The Patriot Act, good or bad, is the law, and nobody has turned it over.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting thing. So you've got the situation, to go back to the theme of this first segment here. These guys, I think it is safe to say that these guys are gathering essentially all of the traffic that's flying across the internet, all of it. Right? They're in the room, the SG3 box, and this is what's publicly known. This is not what's,
It's amazing, actually. I just returned from a trip to Europe, and people in Europe are amazed that the United States, with all its civil liberties, all its protections, and its First Amendment rights and Bill of Rights, could have let this happen. Although, truth is that if you had followed the Patriot Act, you would know a long time ago that it was happening. But in Europe, they're surprised that we let it happen. In Europe, they are more into privacy than we are. Isn't that interesting?
Which is extraordinary. To have to, it's an extraordinary revelation if you think about it. So these guys are gathering this data, okay? And so I think that, and this is a kind of a large core of our conversation today. It's like, okay, now that you've got it, and some will say, for example, there's a couple things that I hear people saying. Well, look, we've always known this has been going on. This has been published several times over. This is, look, you always, whenever you sign up for service X, Y, or Z, the license agreement.
Maybe it's in there.
It's probably in there somewhere.
It's in there, little tiny print.
It's probably in there somewhere.
Font number 4.
Font number 4. So here's the question, and we got 4 minutes to go over here. Here's the question. The question is, let's just say for a moment that we all knew that this was happening. And let's just even say, just for the purposes of discussion, that we all felt that, we kind of all knew that our data was being, pushed around.
Well, I think for a long time we were
Right.
worried about terrorism, and we're cooperating to prevent terrorism.
Right, and
arguably that's still the case.
And let's even say that that's still the case, right? Exactly. So my question is this, and maybe we'll leave this off as our cliffhanger, is why is that suddenly a big deal today? Why is it all of a sudden a big deal? Why are people up in arms about it? And I think that is the core question. How come today, right now? This has been going on for some time. People have known about it. Congress knew about it. The media knew about it. Why is this a big issue today? And I think that is the discussion of why is it a big issue today, I think cuts to the core of, I think, what's going on and what we really need to be concerned about as citizens, and what I believe the battles that I hope we're going to have, the debates I hope we're going to have over the next few months, or hopefully, or what have you, are going to be all about. Why is it a big issue now?
Okay, I can't stand it. We can't
wait?
We can start. Let's start. We got a couple of minutes to start. Go for it.
Well, I think I think what has occurred there's been a very interesting and amazing nexus. A couple things have kind of come together, kind of gas in a match.
You heard it here on ThinkTech.
The gas.
You too, NSA.
The gas. Yeah, you too, NSA. Especially you guys. Patriot Act, Patriots, Tea Party. So I'm saying all the keywords and hoping that'll catch all this. So the gas is the gathering of the data. The match that lights the gas on fire is a clear demonstration of abuses of power. The IRS going after conservative groups specifically, going after those groups specifically. That is another part of this sort of tripod.
But that is not involved in the Fourth Amendment blues.
No, of course not. But it is about government abuse of power blues, and government abuse of privacy blues. Because there is clear evidence that they took, for example, private data and sent it off to the NSA. Yes, there's more.
No, it's just, I was going to say, it's the computer blues, the computer data blues, the IRS thing, because they were working on words, on search words. They would search through the names of the companies.
Right, the names of the organization. So there's a third piece to this magic cocktail. And it's at 2:15, so we're going to wait, right? Are we going to cliffhang this?
Yeah,
I want to cliffhang this. So we're going to talk about, so here we go. So we got two things going on, right? We got the data, right? we've got the government abuse, clear abuse, right? They searched out these Tea Party guys. They took private tax records about donors and made it public, right? And the opposing groups used these lists to go after people, to intimidate them so that they wouldn't donate anymore, right? So this occurred, but there's a third part to me that closes the whole deal and makes the whole thing blow up.
Yes.
We're gonna have to wait, 'cause it is a cliffhanger right now.
I can't
We got to
wait.
come back after the break.
All right, we'll be right back. That's Peter Kay, CEO of CyberCom.
Did we pull that off?
Very, very provocative guy.
Did we pull that off correctly? I know what came in my. We pulled it
We'll
off
be
right.
right back after this break. You'll see. You'll find out stuff you'd never believe. Live, we're ThinkTech. We're here with Peter Kay. We're on Ustream and Spreaker.com. We're broadcasting on both video and audio on the internet. We're using the power of the internet every day, more and more. Like we have 10 shows at the 2 to 4, a 2 to 3, and then a 4 to 5 block every business day. We're going to go to 15 soon enough. You'll see. And we're going to have all kinds of people in here. I mean, I recently set up a poetry show, actually, poetry.
I'm dying to hear it, man.
How can you possibly understand the nature of the universe without having poetry?
I don't think it's possible.
Okay, Peter, people are cliffhanging now.
Are they cliffhanging now? Okay, put your shorts back on, everybody. I'm checking.
By the way, we are talking about Fourth Amendment blues, and you know what that means.
That's right. So in our last exciting episode, I was saying that there is a triad of things that have come together that are really making this an explosive issue. The question is, why is the recent discovery of the NSA's wiretapping, why is that suddenly a big issue when theoretically we knew this was going on for some time and we kind of implicitly felt it was going on for some time? And I'm saying that there's three things involved. The one thing involved, of course, is the NSA's data gathering, which is a fact. We all know it. It's out in the public. Two is the clear demonstration of government abuse of this power. For example, the IRS gives us the great examples where the IRS was targeting specific groups who the group specifically had points of view that were contrary to government groups, right? Patriots, constitutional, abolish the IRS, etc. So the IRS was going after these people and releasing personal information, for example, donor lists of what was sort of a seemingly, supposedly confidential donor lists. They were disclosing that information. And so we got abuse of power. So there's those two things. And the cliffhanger was, what's the third? So here's the third, Jay, in my view. The third cliffhanger is when those government officials are brought to testify before Congress, they either make like they don't know what's going on, or they purposely create misleading statements that give people the wrong impression, such as when Attorney General said, oh no, we're not going after journalists at all. No, we would never do that. No, come to find out now they're going after James Rosen of Fox and they're going after CBS. In fact, there was some viruses or bugs installed on CBS's computers. Or when the NSA guy says, no, we don't have any data on any American citizens. No, we don't have that. Come to find out they do have that. So we have a situation where we have or the other answer is, I don't know anything. I don't know who's leading this investigation. I don't know what the status of it is. I don't know who's in charge of it. We don't know what's going on. So if we take all of that at its face value, we have high-level public officials misdirecting the public, misleading the public, or not knowing what's going on. So when you have that at the top, and these aren't low-level people who are at the gutter, we're talking high-level folks that are in charge of thousands of people, of billions of dollars of budget. When you've got that happening at the top, and you combine that with access to the data that they already have, and you combine that with government abuse of power, you have, I think, what we're seeing right now, which is the nexus of that thing. And it is truly, to me, as someone who, as a small L libertarian who believes in freedom and free societies and free enterprise, and greatly fears, my own personal view, greatly fears encroachment of government powers, as the Founding Fathers did in the Federalist Papers, it is cause to me for significant concern about what is going on. And I really, my prayer is that we don't see the end of this, rather that we see the very beginning of this. And I hope that we won't lose track, we won't get sidetracked by a squirrel that's running around. You know, squirrel, remember from the movie Up, right? We're not going to get distracted by squirrels. We'll stay focused on this important issue and really go as far as we need to go to see how far the rabbit hole goes and create serious reforms as a result of it. That is my hope.
Reaction? I'll give you my reaction.
Yes.
Okay. There are other factors too. You know,
I'm checking the Facebook page. Yes.
one is one is Snowden. His name hasn't come up in our discussion yet.
Right.
Snowden is somebody who, you know, sort of started this snowball.
Snowden,
started
the snowball.
You heard it here on ThinkTech.
The snowballed in first.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, whatever he did, and we can talk about that in greater detail. Whatever he did started this whole public, public involvement and the media. The other factor I think that comes into play on your list is the administration and its troubles. It's in Greek. It's Tsuris. Is that a Greek word?
I don't know.
Whatever.
I'm Greek, but it must be an ancient Greek word.
It's Tsuris. Trouble with the Tea Party. And the dysfunction in Congress, which we've seen every year.
That doesn't help.
We're still seeing.
That doesn't help.
And instead of trying to work with him, they try to find things to knock him about. For example, you know, Benghazi. Benghazi, I mean, how could he possibly have done any different or better? I mean, it was terrorism is what it was. And yet, you know, there's this whole kind of scandal thing to try to, you know, bring him down over that kind of issue, and it's very destructive. And the budget, of course, then, you know. So what we have is there are people out there who like to use him as a scapegoat. They want to bring his administration down, even though he won the election. You know, they're campaigning against him anyway.
Sure.
And that's part of.
But to me, that's politics, and that's always been the case.
Well,
Look,
too much politics.
Perhaps.
I mean, you know, when Congress can't agree on the smallest thing,
sure.
we have a dysfunctional Congress.
I
And
fundamentally.
this has gotten to be, you know, this is just like Benghazi. It's just like the budget, and now we have a political argument over it.
Look, there's no denying that, and I would say that's a valid point that to me adds fuel to the fire, which is essentially what you're talking about is government incompetence, right? It's incompetence.
Well, you know, it's a reality,
right? It's a reality, but it is incompetence. They can't get something done. And you know what? I'm just too small and stupid to understand why. All I know is the end result is stuff ain't getting done, right? And we're not going to a better place, we're going to a worse place.
I mean, I think you have to factor in the other last factor I wanted to throw at you, and that is, and we talked about this before the show began, is the fact is we are at war. And I mean, Boston was only a few weeks ago, and it'll happen again. And we want those guys to protect us. We don't want our cities destroyed. We don't want to be poisoned in the drinking water. You know, want to be deprived of energy and all the stuff that can happen so easily if they have a free run on things. So yes, we expect our civil liberties to be protected, but we also expect not to be attacked. We don't want a 9/11 again. And so we make this kind of demand on the government. This is an implicit demand, but you can be sure if there's an attack, there'll be an attack on the government for failing to stop the attack on the people. And you know, people forget Boston so quickly. It hasn't been 60 days, and you know. And so anyway, what I'm saying is, we are at war, and where does that factor in? If we want to, you know, have reforms, if we want to stop them from doing the one thing they can do domestically to identify terrorism before it happens. Remember that movie with Tom Cruise? I think it was Disclosure or something like that, where they had a new crime, and the crime was
the Future Crimes Unit. The Future Crimes Unit. Yeah. The movie, I forget what the movie is, but I know what you're talking about.
You know, in the history,
when he had the wiping thing, and it was a cool
and the women
user.
in the pool.
Yeah, the women.
in
That
the
was a
pool
great movie.
who could sense this.
Great
stuff.
movie. Loved it.
Well, you
awesome
know,
movie.
it was really inspired.
I loved it.
Inspired because we are now in a different world. Only after 9/11, we want to prevent crimes, so we take these draconian steps to prevent crimes. In the past, we were interested in finding the bugger afterward and putting him in the clink. Now we want to deflect him before he ever does anything.
Yeah,
it's a whole new thing.
Isn't that right? Isn't that so funny? I was listening to a podcast from the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian group.
We are learning a lot about you today, Peter.
Yeah, well, you know, hey man, people say, you know, I'm kind of out of my mind because I believe in this thing called liberty and freedom and free societies. You know, it's crazy. You know, a free people is a very, very radical idea in these times. Call me a nut. You know, freedom, it's bad. Anyway, Cato Institute, and they was funny because they were talking about the NSA spying, and they actually. To do a play on words, they called it the Future Crimes Unit, which is exactly what it was called in the movie, which we can't remember what that movie was. But they called it the Future Crimes Unit because here's the NSA gathering all this data in case they might need it to try to kind of, you know, pull something forward. And to kind of circle all that around, I mean, look, this is where I think we got this sort of tripod, and the tripod of issues is you've got the data, you've got the abuse, and then you have the incompetence. And the incompetence in forms of either untruthful, misdirecting, misleading a testimony, or I don't know what's going on testimony, or we've got gridlock testimony, or who did what to who testimony. Look in the Benghazi issue, for example. We still don't know who, specific to a person, wrote the words that were given to Susan Rice to repeat on the talk shows that it was the result of a stupid video. We still know who that is. And
does it matter?
Yes, it does matter. It absolutely matters, because the question is, why don't we have that data? Why don't we know?
Who's we? Is it necessary?
We the people. We're the people.
The people?
Yes. And here's my point. Had instead, for example, this is why this tripod is what's supporting this issue now. For example, if the Benghazi thing, being what it may, was followed by clear testimony, and we got to the bottom of it right away, and everybody who needed to testify testified, and we found all the answers, we could at least say, man, that was a bad mistake, and hopefully we're not going to do that again. If the IRS part, if the IRS lady doesn't, a senior IRS official pleads the fifth. Senior IRS pleads the fifth. If we instead had, who went to jail over Benghazi? Who got fired over Benghazi? Nobody. Doesn't matter the hell if it doesn't. 4 Americans are dead. On the IRS, who's gotten fired so far? Who's lost their job over what they did? So far, no one. On the NSA, has anyone gotten fired? Has anyone lost their job? No. Snowden's running around to try to avoid getting killed. So my point is, because this incompetence factor kicks in, we as a people have no confidence that this stuff is being, that there's even going to be repercussions for doing bad stuff, because clearly there has not been. So you put these three together, the data, the abuse, and the lack of accountability, you got a scary thing going on.
Well,
do you not? Think about it.
Well, I think what happens here is that, would it have been a better result if the people responsible for the press, the media contact in the Benghazi case, if they had told everything and they researched and found out all the names of the people, or would instead it have been an attack on those people and a further indictment of whoever was involved? It's the apology practice. What I mean is, if the media is hunting you, or your enemies, political enemies, are hunting you, you have to make that choice about whether you're going to be entirely candid or maybe not so candid in order to deal with the attack, because the attack will happen in either case. Whether you're too candid or not candid enough, you get attacked. And I think what we're really talking about here is a media issue. It's like the Israelis in the Gaza war and with those supply ships, and they came out looking bad for the press. And so you say, well, they really didn't do anything wrong. They're trying to save their country. But what they did wrong maybe was the way they sold their position. And that was a problem. So you have got to deal with the media and the press and the public in a way so as to defend your position real smart. And that is more difficult now than it has ever been. And that is a national or international play on everything that happens. And we're going to take another break. Watch this. Watch this, Peter. That's Peter Kay, CEO of CyberCom. We're talking about Fourth Amendment blues. And this conversation is going everywhere it should go and more. We'll be right back.
Indeed it is.
Afternoon, 2 to 3. We have Peter Kay, the CEO of CyberCom, star of stage and screen, talking about the 14th, well, that's another question.
That's another one.
The Fourth Amendment blues, data gathering in these United States, social networking analysis coming to a city near you.
Coming right around the corner. Where do you want to continue this? On the media, you said?
Media, yes.
Media. Well, look what's going on now with these sorts of issues, and I think it's kind of funny. There's a bunch of sort of different views on kind of where the media is going, right? One side says, man, mainstream media, highly biased, kind of one-directional, kind of has a certain point of view, and they're rejecting everything else that's not within their point of view. Clearly, I think it's pretty, without saying who's left or right is nearly irrelevant. We all know that media is biased, and those who don't say that media is biased need to listen to Fox News more often, or maybe listen to MSNBC.
So fact.
Right? Okay. So you got this, but I think we're on the verge of a renaissance, or maybe in the middle of a renaissance of media, because you also have internet media. This show being broadcast on internet media. You have a zillion blogs. You have online news. You have YouTubes. You have, so someone could produce, and the best example is Gangnam Style, right? Psy, the Korean guy makes a really cool, awesome video, very entertaining, puts it on YouTube, and within a short span of a few months goes from 0 to 1 billion views.
Changes everything overnight.
Overnight.
The leverage is extraordinary. It's unbelievable.
Extraordinary, right? So the ability of a viral idea to take hold is now stronger than it ever has been.
Yes.
And I think this is a tremendously liberating thing, because I think part of our nation was founded on the notion of a free press, a free and vibrant press. And what is a free press? I don't know. What is it? Well, back in the founding, it was a guy with a printing press and some paper, right? And he would produce one or two sheets, and
the notion of publication,
right? Pumped it out and distributed this sheet, and it started probably as a one-pager and then became a two-pager, and then we have to today's Sunday newspaper. So you have this capability, and I think it's helped us tremendously to expose issues that normally would stay buried. Because look, it used to be, there are many examples, and I think frankly the Benghazi thing is one of them. There are many examples where there were stories that the traditional mainstream media did not want to get out, but yet it was the online media that stayed on the story and brought out. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the very first one of those was the Monica Lewinsky scandal with Clinton, because the Lewinsky scandal was broke by the Drudge Report, which is an online website, and it was Drudge that brought out the story. Mainstream media didn't cover it, and we had impeachment trials as a result of it. Mm-hmm. So I think, to me, that's in many ways the growth and the continual growth of the online media, to me, is a reassuring part. Some people don't like it because they think that, I don't know, for some reason people, a mainstream media source is more authoritative and it's better, and you got people.
Oh, look what happened in Turkey. That was all social media.
Social media, Egypt, social media, the Arab Spring, social media.
Global news feeds had a tremendous play in that. And what's going on in Brazil right now is a carbon copy of all that. So, but see, the thing to me, and we shouldn't spend too much time on this, but
you're the host.
Another show, It's another show between you and me, if I can get you down here again.
It's another show, yes.
But the notion is that he who controls the media, and everyone can now, right?
That's right.
We here, with our studio,
that's right.
We can broadcast to a lot of people around. This is going global right now, what we're talking about, Peter.
You mean the NSA. You mean the NSA, exactly.
But, my point is that he who understands the media has enormous leverage. And sometimes, the people who should be speaking up in that town hall meeting, the Norman Rockwell Freedom of Speech, poster, aren't. They don't understand. They're talking to themselves, but they're not talking to the world. So you have an inequity of people who appreciate the media, use the media to get their point out. And so it becomes pretty dicey as to whether the truth prevails or only one side of the argument gets out.
Yeah, well, certainly. This goes back, I think, into one of the essences, I think, of what's going on, which is, do you view the world as better organized when it's centralized hierarchical decision making? For example, traditional mainstream media, right? You have a news desk, you have a news operation. It's one kind of centralized big thing, and then they kind of make decisions, and millions of people consume that content. Or do you believe sort of in and I'm going to call that, and you'll know which way I feel about it, I'm going to call that the mainframe green screen model.
Fair enough.
Right? Versus, do you believe in the networked model? The network model says that the power and the data is distributed. It's everywhere. It's the iPhone model, right? I've got my own little broadcast station right here, and if I want to kind of fire this thing up, I could do a recording right now live, and you stream this and Spreak it.
It doesn't matter what you believe, because it's happening.
It's happening.
The Turkey experience and the Sao Paulo experience.
Exactly.
It's happening right now. That little phone has changed the world.
I couldn't agree more.
In third world countries, 8-year-old kids have that phone.
Yeah.
And they can do exactly what you and me can do with it.
That's exactly. And so look at this. So to me, this is the part that, to kind of move this to a sort of a positive note, is that what's really going on with the world is decentralizing, right? Power is being pushed to the edge, right? We went from mainframe computers where we all had dumb terminals that had no intelligence of their own, hooked into one mothership, now where we're all carrying a supercomputer in our pockets. The world is shifting away from one or two, there were like 3 major news networks, right? Now there's a gazillion websites.
And what makes it so interesting is that now the little iPhone is being sent off on a splitter.
On a splitter to the NSA.
So you thought you had all this power and control. You thought you had this alternative network of information and thought and viewpoint. Oh no, it's not what you think. It's different.
And you really don't, you know. Did you see Man of Steel, the Superman movie yet?
No, it's just recent.
Yeah,
it's
just
only out a week or so. Yeah.
Just came out.
You're way ahead on that.
Well,
one,
you know, it's just a good movie. But I won't do. No spoilers here. But there was one scene in the movie when the attacking aliens, all they did was they took over everyone's screen. And they took over TV screens, they took over mini phone screens, and one guy's image was broadcast everywhere. And for that one moment, you saw that, yeah, we think that we've built this great, fantastic liberator of thought and liberator of democracy, but it doesn't take too much to take it over.
No, I think we haven't seen. I mean, for example, they say, you know, the next war. I'm not sure whether it's going to be a water war.
It'll be a cyber war.
It's going to be a cyber war, and a cyber war means that you try to bring the other guy's city down using, you know, whatever technology you have available. And you know, we're looking into those possibilities. The Chinese are looking into the possibility. Iran is looking into those possibilities. There's a number of countries that are focused on that. We haven't seen it play out yet.
No, we haven't.
But it's there.
There's no question it's there. I mean, look at. If you look at from a cyber war perspective, you know, there's been this amazing development of technology, and the inextricable. We are inextricably tied to technology. And it's not just been the past 20 or 30 years. I would argue it's been sort of the past several thousand years. One of the earliest forms of technology was fire, and fire used to cook food. Okay, now the funny part is this. We essentially have, for thousands of years, have had an external stomach.
Right, the fire cooking the food.
Right, the pot bubbling and cooking the food has been essentially an external stomach, right? Because we put a bunch of vegetables in it, we put a bunch of raw meat into it, we cook it, which is basically what we're doing is we're pre-digesting it, right? And then we eat the food. It's a little bit easier on our digestive system. Essentially, we have been inextricably tied to an external stomach since fire. Okay?
You know, and if you're wondering when I'm going to get back to the subject, we'll be back there really soon because Peter's going to connect this all up for us in a moment.
The dots is coming together. Them dots is coming together. I should cliffhang this. We're at 2:42. Yeah, we're going to cliffhang this one. Let's see if I can time let's see if I can do my cliffhanging timing. So we've got an external stomach, right? And it is very, very easy to say that the moment in time when we were inextricably tied to this external stomach was probably thousands of years ago, and we can't live. So in other words, I would say thousands of years ago, we stopped being independent of the ability to have. We lost our independence from fire thousands of years ago, right? Thousands.
Right.
We lost
in a partnership with fire.
Can't do without
forever.
it. Right? Can't be without it. Okay. So I would argue we lost our power to be independent from electricity, raw electrical current. Probably maybe 50 years ago.
Without it, civilization would collapse.
Correct, right? You cannot live in a big city. There's no way you can live in a big city without electricity.
A world without electricity would not support the population of the world today.
Certainly at the densities. It might support the population if it was dispersed, if we were all farmers.
In
rural areas, they would be fine, but cities, no way.
Back to the bush,
yeah. You couldn't take the elevator to the 40th floor. You couldn't put the stuff in the fridge, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So humans lost their independence from electricity, let's say 50 years ago.
I know what you're going to say.
I'm going to say we got 2 minutes to go.
We have lost privacy. Privacy is the victim, the casualty of what happened in 9/11.
That is an interesting point. So let's cliffhang it this way.
Okay.
We lost our independence from fire thousands of years ago. Can't live without fire. We lost our independence from electricity, let's say 50 years ago. 1960 was pretty
Fair
much the
enough.
end of it, right? When the skyscraper, I'd say right about the time when the skyscraper came into effect, which used a high-speed elevator to get you up 100 floors.
And density would reach
High
a
density,
certain level,
dense American cities, right? Okay. So now the question is, have we now lost our independence from data networks? Can we survive without, and that's the cliffhanger, there's 244. Can we survive, can we live without a data network?
But the answer is so obvious.
Well, we don't make it too obvious because it's 244. Are we supposed to wait for 245 to do the major cliffhanger? But okay, so let's say we can guess.
Real cliffhanger, Peter.
So the question is, if we have, a long time ago, if we lost fire, he who could put out the fire who could control us, but if we had thousands of fires, you couldn't put those out. Electricity was the same. You could take out the electricity of a city, but you couldn't take out the electricity of an entire nation. Today with data, though, how susceptible are we with it? How susceptible? How far can we disrupt data? And that is the question
Not very far.
that we are going to end with at 2:45.
Okay, all right. So
Have I cliffed hang this appropriately?
Okay. I think so. I think that means we're ready. We're ready for a break. This is ThinkTech. We're here with Peter Kay, CEO of CyberCom. We're talking about the Fourth Amendment blues, and we will get to that. I'll be right back after this break.
All right.
I'll be right. This is ThinkTech on Ustream and Spreaker and ThinkTechHawaii.com. Take a look. And we're here with Peter Kay, CEO of CyberCom, star of stage and screen. What was the other thing, Peter?
Master of time, space, and dimension.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're delighted also to have an unidentified guest in the NSA who's listening and helping us out here.
Because we've given the correct keywords at the right moment.
You're right. Well, I want to talk about that, but first you have to answer the question.
So to recap before our last exciting episode, right? We lost our independence from fire thousands of years ago. Humankind could not live without fire. We lost our independence from electricity, say about 50 years ago, where mankind could not live without electricity. And now today, the question is, how far can we disrupt? How dependent are we on data networks? And of course, you and I know that answer. We're completely dependent on data networks. So the real question is, how much can we disrupt? So if you disrupted fire, I could put out your fire, I could put out your stove, but the guy next door, he's still got his stove, and the guy down the street, he's still got his stove. Electricity, well, I could take out maybe a city. I could maybe wipe out a city, maybe even a region, but the rest of the planet's still going to function fine. But now with data, think about how much we can disrupt data. And let me take a very, 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 very simple example. The government could very easily shut down what's called the name servers for Google.com. So that Google.com, when you type in Google.com, nothing comes up on your browser, or worse, it goes to a government page. So, in the course of minutes, who has been affected by that altercation? The entire planet. Because the entire planet uses Google.com. So the whole planet gets taken out.
Yeah, and it's nuclear.
It's global nuclear.
So all of a sudden, we're thrown back into the Stone Age.
Boom!
Because we're so dependent on it.
That's right, because you can't live without Google.
That's why it's very clear that if you were planning to destroy somebody, you would want to destroy that, beyond the cities, beyond the hard infrastructure.
Leave the cities alone. They'll go down on their own.
Remember that was the bomb, the clean bomb, the hydrogen bomb,
the neutron bomb.
Neutron bomb. And left everybody died, but the city stayed in place.
City was fine, just killed the people.
Well, that's exactly what cyber war would do.
Yes, it would kill the bits.
Yeah.
It would kill the bits.
So nobody could live. And the thing is, we have this population that's huge and growing and dependent. So that's why the whole area is so important.
Man, can we write a cool book?
Yeah.
What a cool book, yeah?
More shows. But here, I want to go back to the whole thing about...
We need paid sponsors, by the way. We need paid sponsors to do more of the show.
Sign up, ThinkTechHawaii.com. But the whole thing about Snowden. Snowden says that he was supposed to, and he makes himself sound like a pretty senior guy. I don't know how that's possible.
29-year-old, hard to believe.
He was with Booz Allen for 90 days, and he's 29 years old, and come on.
Yeah, man.
But he's got this thing. He's very articulate. You've seen a tape of him.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
Smart
he really
guy.
knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Smart guy. Didn't finish school,
That makes two of us.
Yeah, but smart guy. He manages to sound like a real pro.
Absolutely.
And so you really wonder what's going on. And then he says, well, I was a senior guy, and we would just look at certain kinds of information. Isn't it what the way
He said
it's
we could
coming
look
out?
at any. We could look at anything.
He says we can look at anything.
That's right.
But there were steps, there were click points, right? And the supervisor could do that, but maybe not the lower level. So what you have is a whole hierarchy of people in charge of finding, qualifying information, and then they would take the case to a higher level. Frankly, I don't believe that. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Well,
I think
we don't trust it now, right? We don't trust it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? That's my point. Why, Jay? Why don't you trust it now? Because you've got high-level government officials who say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who did it. It wasn't me. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So you know what? We should kind of, I think let's move our conversation to what's got to happen, Mr. Fidell. What's got to happen? What kind of changes do Americans need to happen to kind of bring this stuff back, sort of back into check?
Well, that's very hard to answer. I'll tell you why. Because we're at war, and we can't. It's like in the old days, say in World War II, if the general would say to the newspaper, "Don't print that. That's going to compromise the lives of our troops," they wouldn't.
That's right.
And they were on board. They were part. Like when they went out into the battlefield to cover the story, they would only print stuff that was deemed not dangerous. In this case, how do you do that? How do you do reform without telling the world you're reforming? Especially when people are demanding reform, how do you reform without telling them when they're demanding it? And if you tell everybody, and you're talking about telling everybody, you're telling the bad guys too. So now they will know how we do it, and they'll find ways around it, right?
Yeah, and look, and I'm not advocating that we give up our national secrets. And I think you raise it. There's a couple of interesting points. The first point is real quick is you said that we're at war. I don't disagree. But here's the funny part is, can you ever name a single moment, and this would be fun to do a LexisNexis search on this, can you find a single moment, one, when our president, our current president, Barack Obama, has said, we are at war? And I will bet you a lunch that he has never said it.
Yeah, but Bush said it.
Bush did, yes.
And whatever Bush was doing with the Patriot Act has continued.
Correct,
it hasn't been repealed.
Correct, but
Obama has never denied.
Correct, he has never done. But here's my point. My point is, when a nation is at war, it is up to the president to lead the country through the war and wage the war and win the war.
Our commander-in-chief.
Commander-in-chief. Our current commander-in-chief has said all wars must end. His recent speech, right, said, look, this is no longer a war. We're kind of back to pre-9/11. This is more of a police act. Yeah, we got to hunt down the bad guys. We got to give up some of your privacy, but all wars must end. This war is over, right? Okay. So we may be a nation at war, but we're not acting like a nation at war. That's just almost a side note. So what's going to happen? Look, I think to me, my view about what Dan Friedman gave, and Dan, I hope you're watching this. Dan Friedman gave a really good point. He said, look, all of these data gathering things, one thing that we can certainly do without question on the data gathering is provide an irrefutable, unbroken chain of evidence and an audit trail on every request made for data, who made the request for the data, why was the data requested, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can have a complete audit trail so that when someone asks the question, hey, who wrote the talking points for Susan Rice? The answer is, hit the button and here's your answer.
Well, but suppose, I'm a terrorist and I want to find out what they've been doing with me. And I want to find out all the audit trail on me. Okay, and so you're going to give it to me?
Oh no, not necessarily. I wouldn't.
Who's going to give it to me?
Yeah. Well,
who's the guy who can come in and demand that?
Well, I would say, before the Patriot Act, pre-Patriot Act, who could see an audit trail of a search warrant, right? So my point is that maybe something is some parts of the Patriot Act need to be repealed, but I think the essence of it is, there is not a clear, simple audit trail. And I would be happy if the audit trail at least existed, right? And through
And
a court order, well, through a court order of appropriate type, if it was a terrorist, someone should be able to get the darn thing. So when here, my point is this: I want to, if we go just for a minute for the point of conversation, that my tripod is what created the current mess. The tripod is access to the data, abuse of the data, and lack of accountability to the data. Right? If you at least can change one of these three things, you can't, let's just say for a moment that we can't change the possession of the data. And let's just say that people will be people and they're still going to abuse the data. But at least we've got accountability through an audit trail. If I at least have, if you could take away any one of these three things, it'd be awesome. I don't think we're going to get rid of the data. I don't think we're going to get rid of the abuse because we are human. I do think we can at least address accountability. And it is, and we can't say it's easy, but certainly we could use the power of the data, the power of the computers themselves to give an inescapable, unbroken chain of evidence of audit to that data. So that someone, when someone says, how in the heck did you get my information about da-da-da-da? It's one report, it's a click and a report away that's accessible to Congress or a judge or an appropriate legal body. Today, that accountability is missing.
Peter, it's been wonderful talking to you.
Good fun, man.
Good fun.
Love it.
My brains,
our brains about to
are exploding, and every time we get together, the same thing happens. Peter Kay, CEO of CyberCom, talking about the Fourth Amendment blues. Thank you so much for coming on.
Great fun, Jay. Great fun. Thanks a lot, man. Aloha. Good fun, damn it.